What's up, everyone? My name is Wes, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. In today's episode, I was joined by Tyler Stogel, guitarist and vocalist of Iowa emo stalwarts Stars Hollow. The band just released their long-awaited debut album, I Want to Live My Life, on May 7th via Acrobat Unstable Records. Tyler and I talked about the build-up to the album, how his songwriting has grown, what's new for the band, and a whole lot more. Without any further ado, here's my interview with Tyler from Stars Hollow on the Ear Coffee Podcast. How are you doing on this fine Monday? It's a little cloudy here in the Twin Cities, but
I'm doing okay. It's sunny in Iowa, that's great. It's Monday, so that's okay, but our record comes out on Friday, so I'm excited about that. At least that's getting me through the week.
A good thing to look forward to at the end of the week.
Oh, yes.
Love it. All right, so as I'm sure anyone that's listened to Stars Hollow or knows anything about the band, they know that it's not a solo project. So there are two other members of the band. So just to get things going, why don't you do a little intro about your name, your band, and your role in the band? Excuse me, and then who are the other two folks that make Stars Hollow what Stars Hollow is?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Tyler Stogel. I do vocals and I play guitar. I also kind of head the songwriting, sort of. I bring skeletons and then they make the songs actually good. And then Andrew Farron is our drummer. He's been drumming since our second EP, Happy Again. Our original drummer quit and he stepped up to the plate. And then Gavin Brown is our bassist. He actually just joined right before starting to record this record and write this record. But he's, super great guy, good bassist, and got a good band.
Yeah. So I like finding out a little bit about people's history with music just as a listener before we dive into the songwriting and all the stuff, because pretty much any musician has just a really deep connection with music as a listener before they ever pick up guitar or put a pen to paper or anything like that. So I'm wondering when did you first really connect on a serious level with music where you kind of noticed, where you're like, oh, this is something that I'm super excited about, I'm super passionate about, and maybe want to make one day?
Yeah, that's a super good question. So I would probably say, when I was a kid, I remember having the Now That's What I Call Music Volume 3 and Volume 4, and I remember I was super, super into Blue by Eiffel 65. I don't know, that's one of my earliest memories of being this song is good, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of the first time I remember hearing music and being okay, cool. And I was raised, around music. My mom listened to classic rock all the time, just constantly.
Mm-hmm.
She was big into music, and my uncle and grandpa both played guitar in bands and stuff. So it's always kind of been on the outliers of my life in some way or another. I'd say the first time that I actually really enjoyed it to the point where I was oh, this is actually cool, and I actually like this band, was probably 5th or 6th grade. My sister, who's 4 years older than me, she has really good taste in music, and she was super into Linkin Park. And that was probably around the time that Meteora came out.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the music video for Somewhere I Belong and being this is so sick. I love everything about this. The whole aesthetic of it and just the instrumentals. I was just blown away by it. And I felt emotionally connected to it, which is weird to say at 11 years old to be, emotionally connected to something like that. But I'd say it started there. And then I got into My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy pretty soon after that, Taking Back Sunday, Silverstein. So a lot of those Victory Records bands and stuff like that too. So I definitely say it started when I was 11 or 12. And I got my first guitar when I was 6, but didn't touch it until way after.
Yeah.
So it took a while for me to get interested.
Yeah. When did you first actually, I guess, even just playing in a band or even writing songs that probably have never been recorded, will never see the light of day, as many I young early songwriters find themselves just kind of burying stuff. But when did you first start thinking of putting together a band, or when did you first join a band and start making music, like I guess in any official capacity?
Yeah, I'd say so. When I was probably like 13, I started playing guitar. I had the one that I got when I was like 6 years old, and I was just like, okay, I'll just pick it up, mess with it, because I got really into Guitar Hero, and I was like, the real thing can't be that hard, you know. Um, and so probably like about a year later, I had been taking guitar lessons. My parents were like super supportive and were like, hey, yeah, cool. We'll pay this weird guy $30, to take you for half an hour and
Just some guy,
teach
yeah.
you. Yeah, but pretty much it was pretty much just some guy. He was really good though. But yeah, so I did that for about a year. I did it for like 3 years, probably, but I started my first band about a year after taking lessons. We were called More Than the Rest. I don't know like why. I don't really know why. About that time, like basically all we did was we had like a little video camera and we would record ourselves covering The Quiet Things That No One Ever Knows by Brand New over and over and over. So
Oh
there's
no.
literally a disc. Yeah, it's bad. Of there's a disc of just us playing the same song like 7 times in a row. And like it's in a different location every time because no one would let us practice at one place for more than, whatever. So yeah, it's very cringy, very bad. No one sang in the band, so it was just like two guitarists and a drummer. And it was like the worst first band probably you could have, but it was also like a very telling experience because I would try to write songs, and there's like videos of that on those as well, where I would try to write a song and have the drummer play with me, and literally like in the video he plays along with me for like 10 seconds and gets up and leaves because he just like couldn't I guess write. I don't know, but yeah, so that was my first band. We didn't really write any original songs, thank goodness. And but it was cool. I mean, it was a good learning experience to see what it felt like to be in a band.
Yeah, gotta start somewhere with brand new covers with no vocals.
Yep, exactly.
So how did the current lineup of Stars Hollow come together? You mentioned a little bit earlier that Andrew, the drummer, joined just after Happy Again, and then Gavin joined just before the lead up in the recording and everything for I Want to Live My Life. So how did you get connected with those two? And since you've been the only consistent member throughout the 5 or 6 years or so that the band has been active, how did that lineup change affect the band, like the process for even like something like Tadpole, which is the 2019 single that you guys did, and then of course this record, which is a debut album long in the making, to say the least?
Yes, for sure. So as far as Andrew and Gavin and how we all got involved, so Andrew was in my old band. We were called Porch Swing. We were like a post-hardcore band. And he was in that band. And I met him before that because he recorded my old pop punk band that I used to be in. So I've just like known him for a long time. And when we started Stars Hollow, I had thought about him being the drummer anyway, but it just didn't really seem like his kind of thing at the time, just based on like the genre of it. And so I just didn't bother asking, and I just asked a different friend. And then that drummer left because he just was like, well, I don't think this band's going to do anything or go anywhere or anything. And I was like, okay, I mean, that's like, whatever, go live your life. That's cool. But so then I asked Andrew to join, and he was just like, sure, why not? Kind of under the stipulation that like, he doesn't like to tour very much. He's very much a homebody. And so we were like, you know what, we can make that work, get fill-in drummers, whatever. And so he joined, and then Gavin actually was just like a big fan of the band initially, and he helped press Happy Again on vinyl initially on the like first 7-inch pressings. It was like his idea, and he came to us and was like, hey, I want to fund this. I like this record a lot. I want to own it. And so we just did that. And then when our old bassist quit, I was just kind of like, well, shit, who do I ask? And I had a few people in mind that we had like toured with in the past, and a couple people from like our local scene. And then finally I was just like, I should ask Gavin, because he cares about this band more than anyone does. And he cares about it more than I do, probably. So, I mean, there's no better person, to have in the band, because that was a thing that had become a problem in the past where I just felt like I was the only one who cared.
Mm.
So I felt like that like helped things a lot. And then as far as like the songwriting and how that's been affected, I think for one, it's definitely way tighter. I think we're all just kind of on the same page of what we're going for. Andrew as a drummer is much more rooted in like hardcore and like pop punk and stuff, which is like preferable for me as to what I would want out of a drummer. Cause I don't, you know, I write wimpy sounding stuff and he makes it not sound wimpy basically. So that was a nice change when he joined the band. And then Gavin is a very good bass player in the sense that he knows when he needs to be playing something that's cool and when he needs to just be playing something that like makes it sound full. Which our old bassist, insanely good bassist, but he was very much like, I'm going to kind of try to shred all the time and do like cool stuff, and which is fine. You know, the songs were always good, but especially for this record, there's just a lot of stuff where it helped a lot to have something that was more like punchy and filling than like noodly, I guess. So overall, I think it's really good. I'm super happy with, you know, how we've all came together at this point.
I'm glad I was able to ask you this because when I first came across the band, it's when Sage was the touring drummer, and I just assumed Sage was in, at the time, only 2 bands, because this was, I think, before they'd started drumming with Thank You, I'm Sorry. And I was like, oh, Sage is just in a cool Iowa band. What? Cool. And now the truth has been revealed.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's exactly. He, I feel bad for him sometimes because, he's toured with us a couple of times and people will be like, oh, Sage from Stars Hollow. And he has to be like, no. I'm Sage from Nice and Thank You, I'm Sorry. Like, and people always come up to him and be like, man, like, I really like this part that you wrote. And they're like, well, actually, I didn't write it. But yeah, so Sage has been super, super, cool and helpful with touring and stuff. And they've been a real champ as far as dealing with that kind of stuff. So it's very appreciated.
Yeah. Shout out to Sage. This is a pro Sage podcast.
Yes.
So since the band has been active in some way, shape, or form for longer than a lot of bands, especially in like DIY last, just in general, I'm assuming that you've really, a lot of your approach to like how you create your songs, whether it's just even like the lyrics or composition, has changed a lot since you were first starting out writing Stars Hollow stuff for your early EPs and demos and such. So I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how that has evolved and how just kind of your approach to constructing a Stars Hollow song has evolved, or maybe just kind of changed in unexpected ways over the past 5 or 6 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that a lot of people like pretend not to do that I will gladly admit to doing is I do pay a lot of attention to what people like. So like when we released a split with 3 other bands, and when we released it, it kind of flopped, honestly. Like those 2 songs, like no one listens to. They're Participation Award and Good for Nothing. And I like those songs a lot, but like no one else cared about them. People didn't really connect with them. So I think that was kind of a lesson in realizing the parts of my writing that I really liked, and then how to kind of like make that coexist with what people would enjoy, you know, ultimately. Because when it comes down to it, I don't write at all like just so that people will enjoy it, but it's just something that definitely sticks with me when I'm moving forward in writing. I think I've just become a lot better also at knowing when to just like cut something if I don't like it. Like I won't slave over a song that is just like not clicking with me or that just isn't enjoyable. Usually I can tell within like 15 minutes of starting to try to write if I'm going to stick with it or not. And then also just like the process of structures of songs and like when to start writing lyrics, it's all just become a lot more fine-tuned and polished over time, to the point where I don't write super often, but if I were to sit down and write a Stars Hollow song, it would be a lot faster than it used to be, just because I kind of know like the general flow for myself at this point.
This is kind of a 2-pronged question then. What is something that you still appreciate about that era of your own songwriting and of Stars Hollow back in like 2015, 16, like as mentioned, like the early demos and EP? what's something you still appreciate about that period of your songwriting life, I guess? And what is something that you know now and have learned as someone writing and creating music for a while now? What's something that you've learned since then that you wish you had known back then when you're first starting out in this project? Because you already mentioned you've been in a few bands prior to Stars Hollow, so you kind of knew the ropes, I guess, for a lot of the stuff you were doing.
These are really good questions, by the way. Super good questions.
Thank you.
Stuff I don't think about very often, but it's cool to think about. So I would say, oh my gosh. So what's the first half of the question again?
Sorry.
So sorry.
What is something that you still really appreciate about like the songs that you were first writing when Stars Hollow started, and like you still appreciate about your approach from back then?
Absolutely. So I think, especially when I listen to I'm really not that upset about it. I don't feel super attached to it anymore just because it's been so long. But one thing that I did admire when I listened to it is just like how much I could tell I was trying to prove a point. Like I wanted to like prove that I could write, kind of mathy stuff. I wanted to prove that I could write cool riffs. Like it was a lot about proving to myself that I was a musician and I could play the music I wanted to play. And I just think honestly, like just kind of the like rawness of it, of just like, because some of it is just so all over the place. Like tempo wise, I'm just jumping back and forth, and like the tunings were weird. And like, I don't know. I think there was something nice about how much I didn't give a shit. Like I was like, I'm just going to write what I write and it's going to be sick. And then we'll play it around the Midwest and it'll be cool. I think, and then as far as like, if I could, tell myself something now, that would be useful. Just maybe like focusing the songwriting was a big thing that I should have done. Because as much as I liked that it was all over the place and that's a cool like snapshot of what the band was like, listening to it, it's just kind of like, how do I put it? It's like, it's not interesting and crazy enough to be like, wow, this band's like really wild, but it's also not boring enough to be like, oh, this is boring. I just kind of wish I found the right place in the middle of being like, okay, this is just a good solid band. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where that's what I was writing at the time, and it's forever recorded and immortalized, and I just have to deal with that. And it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
For sure.
With these, I think there are 10 songs on the album. What was the timeline for these 10 tracks? Were they always were they written more recently and intended for an album? Were you like, when you were writing these, were you in that headspace where like, I'm working on an album, the band is working on an album, or were they kind of just pulled together from different times of the band, or just like different writing spurts to, like, oh, these are all similar enough and they work together, let's put them together as an album? And I'm just curious where your head's kind of been at when you were first conceptualizing this as a record instead of just a bunch of songs the band was working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely they were all recorded for the purpose of being an album. So yeah, all of our releases are pretty linear. Like, we don't really have songs that just stay laying around. Either they get totally scrapped or we use them. So as far as timeline, like some of these songs were written like before Tadpole was released, just because Tadpole was just kind of part of that same writing process of, okay, let's write a record. And then at a certain point we were just like, let's just do a single, something to like just get through whatever. And we decided to just go with Tadpole because it was like the most complete song that I had at the time. And so realistically for the record, there were probably about 12 songs written. Then Tadpole was used, and then one other song was just kind of scrapped because when I went to demo it, I just like hated it. And I don't know why I even wrote it. And like, maybe if I heard it now, it'd be different. But especially after having all the other songs demoed out, I was like, okay, these songs are really good. I'm really proud of these. I don't really care to like waste my time recording this song that, I don't care about when there's 10 songs that I do. So yeah, definitely it was written in the headspace of, this is going to be an album. This is a snapshot of my life at this time. This is the concept. Just very much, like a time capsule of probably like 20 18, to be honest, at this
Yeah.
point, because it's been a while. So
Yeah, that makes sense given that with both Happy Again and this album, like there's the song titles like form like phrases or sentences sort of, and um I noticed that I think on Bandcamp and or maybe even elsewhere, the song "Comma" on Happy Again is actually a comma, but at least on
mhm.
Spotify it's just the word comma, which is I
Yeah,
get
that was
it, but come on.
oof,
Uh,
yeah, it made me so mad. So yeah, DistroKid, which is the stupid site that we use for distribution, or used to use, I should say. Yeah, they wouldn't allow like punctuation titles, and I was like, that's the whole point. Like, it has to be a comma. Like, that's like, because ultimately, like, there were a lot of people who listened to our band a lot who didn't know that Happy Again was like a through line like thing.
yeah.
That all the songs make a phrase. And then when I told them, I was like, no, comma is like a literal comma. They'd be like, whoa, like never,
I
I
get
never
it.
realized. And a lot of people thought the song was called Coma, like a coma,
Oh.
like in a coma. And I was like, no, there's two M's. Like, I know why that's confusing, I guess, because it's like a quiet song.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, that was the worst thing ever.
Oh.
But luckily for I Want to Live My Life, there's a song on it that's just like an ellipses, like dot dot dot. And luckily this time they let it fly, and so now there's a dot dot dot
Thank God.
on the
Yeah.
album. So
The vision is maintained. We're good. Um,
exactly.
you kind of mentioned this before, where a lot of the songs, at least with Gavin and Andrew, you come to them with a demo or like a skeleton of a song, and you flesh it out as a trio. Uh, has that always been your process for, I guess, finalizing songs beyond just kind of your own demos and lyrics and such, or is that something that you just really fell into once this lineup solidified and kind of the band was on that same wavelength?
I would say it's always kind of been this way. It does look a little bit different because when the original lineup was together, we had a lot more free time, and so we would like actually get together and actually physically play the songs together. Um, Whereas now it's like we all have full time jobs, like, big person adult jobs. And so we can't just necessarily take time off randomly. Sometimes our schedules don't line up. We all have hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time now it's very much similar in the sense that I have like a skeleton. But a lot of times I'll just like demo it real quick on Logic, or like do like a Guitar Pro tab thing just to have it all midied out. Then I'll send it their way and just kind of see like what they think. I'll tell them, there's no bass on it and the drums are programmed and super basic. So, do what you want with it. And that's basically how it goes. For this record, for I Want to Live My Life, at least, we did get together a bit more. It was kind of in phases. So initially I came to the band with the skeleton. I demoed it. Me and Gavin sat together and worked on bass stuff, demoed that. And then me and Andrew would sit together and he would kind of program out the drums and figure out like where we wanted things to be. And then once it was all done, we all just started playing it like in a room together actually, and just kind of worked out all the kinks and all the parts that weren't working. So yeah, definitely it stayed pretty similar. It's just a matter of, getting to the in-betweens and everything. But yeah, as long as the songs turn out, I'm cool. However we do it, that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's the most important part. Um, for the writing process and recording process for this album, would you say that the initial like compositions, like in like the musical elements that the three of you are putting together, were more important than something that's a bit more lyrically driven, or would you say that the lyrics have always been a more driving force for and more important, at least from your perspective? And I know sometimes with music that features a lot of screaming, it's sometimes hard to make out, and that doesn't mean the lyrics aren't important. That just means that you might need to have like the lyric sheet pulled up on Bandcamp, at least for me.
Accurate.
Or would you say that it's kind of been more balanced, where both are obviously very key parts of the songs, but they were still very important to you and Gavin and Andrew?
So I would say, from my perspective at least, they're both like about equal importance. The first thing I typically do is pretty much always is the instrumentals first, just because writing lyrics without a framework gives my brain like too much room to like to
Yeah.
go wild, and like then I write things that like cannot possibly ever fit into a song pretty much. It's also motivating because once I have like an actual thing to write for, I have a reason to write,
Yeah.
which helps a lot. So I definitely would say that, you know, the process, one definitely comes before the other. But in terms of importance, I spend probably just as much time on each, making sure that everything flows well, that the words make sense, that it's, you know, emotionally conveying what I want it to. And also making sure that I can physically do it. Because sometimes I write things that like, there's like way too many words, and then I try to do it and I'm out of breath in like 5 seconds. And so, yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah. Has that always been the approach, or kind of how you view these things, or is that just something that I already kind of mentioned this, but like that's really locked in with this era of the band where things seem to be on a little bit more even footing, especially with like how all over the place you feel like the early stuff was, and kind of how chaotic some of like the tempos and everything were and such.
Yeah, so I'd say, so it's kind of hard to say because in retrospect, like reading those lyrics back, it seemed like I didn't care as much because like out of those songs, there's one song where I still lyrically like it. And so I look at the others and I'm like, did you try on this? Or was it like, I don't like, it was hard for me to tell. But like, I would say back then I probably put more stock in the instrumentals because I just wanted to write cool riffs and, you know, be like, oh yeah, I'm good at guitar. Like that was like more important to me than anything. Yeah. And yeah, so for sure, I think back then, words were a little less important. And now I think I'm just a better writer for the most part, at least, you know, in terms of like what I envision good writing to be from my standpoint. So I think it's evened out a lot just because my skills in one have increased for sure.
So with the album's release, it's at the time of recording it is not out yet, but it'll be out as of May 7th. So by the time you're hearing this, why haven't you listened to it yet? But originally it was planned to come out sometime, I think, last summer, or at least some point in 2020. Was that just delayed due to the pandemic and the inability to tour that was really hitting everybody super hard in the first couple months of the pandemic, even more so that it still sucks for everybody? But how did the decision to move things, even if you didn't you weren't sitting there in 2020 and you're like, May 7th, 2021, that's the day. I don't think that's what happened, but how did that initial shift and just decision to postpone the album's release till a better time for you and probably for Acrobat and Stable, the label, which we'll talk a little bit more in a sec, but how did that all kind of come about, and what was that about?
So one thing would be that when we recorded this album, we did it over like multiple weekends or a few day stints, just because of our jobs, because we were recording up in Minneapolis. We just couldn't take the time all off to just be like, yeah, screw it, let's just knock it out. And it has worked for us in the past. We all do pretty well when we can just kind of focus on what we need to get done and, you know, work through those things, and then just, you know, you're done, it's good, just relax, I guess. So part of it was that we started recording. Oh geez. Yeah, we started recording the record in September of 2019. That is when we tracked drums. And then, oh my God, that just seems so wrong, but that is 100% right. because part of the issue was then we were like, okay, well, we're going on tour in Japan in February, so we need to be ready for that financially, and just, you know, that kind of put some issues into the recording time. So we were like, okay, we'll just, after the Japan tour, we'll just knock everything else out and be good to go. And then that's when COVID happened, and that did cause some issues. It was probably just as much the fact that the guy who records us, his name's Greg Lindholm. He has like a family, like he has a wife, two kids, like 2 dogs. Like he's living like an actual life, and he doesn't record music as like a full-time job.
Yeah.
He kind of used to, but like then it was like I have kids now, I need health insurance kind of thing. um, so we kind of had to work around his schedule because it was weird as well, because he worked like on weekends and we had weekends off, so we had to figure out like ways to make that work. um, so yeah, I mean, ultimately COVID was part of it, but it was just as much like just life getting in the way in general, um, and just other plans coming. And then when we had it done, because I think we wrapped it up in like oh my god, like late 2020 at some point, and we hadn't decided if we were going to go with Acrobat Unstable yet or not. But I was literally like thinking, okay, once we find somewhere, I want to put it out like a week after we decide. Like I want it out like immediately. I don't care about like PR. I don't care about marketing. I just want it out. Like I just want to surprise drop it. And then obviously that didn't happen because here we are like 5 months later.
Yeah.
And it's finally going to come out. So
yeah, there's been the whole rollout. There's been music videos and everything, and the whole package. So you've already kind of mentioned just how you feel like you've improved just as a lyricist, as a songwriter, as a musician, and just how wonderful the other two members of the band and how much they've added. But I'm curious, what moment or moments are you the most proud of on this album? Like, what are the ones that you, if you listen to it right as soon as we finish this, the parts that you still just kind of think to yourself, like, damn, that's such a cool part. Like, I'm really proud of it. I'm really glad we did that. And on the flip side of that, what were some of the biggest challenges from putting everything together besides just like scheduling, like the logistical stuff that is a little bit more natural for any band recording and just having a life outside of music?
For sure. So I say, honestly, the record has a lot of moments that I'm super proud of. So the first song on the record is just like, I don't know when this episode will be out. I'm guessing it won't be before the record comes out, obviously. So spoilers or whatever. But the first song on the record,
it'll be after. Like, so spoilers don't exist anymore.
Fantastic. So the first song on the record is just like a brief introduction, kind of introduces some themes that show up throughout the record, and it's kind of like the title track, but there's technically 3 title tracks. So that song, the middle song, which is the Ellipses song, and then the last song, But Better, those are all kind of like one through line concept. And I think every time I hit one of those, like, it just feels very like accomplishing. And then also the first song's really cool just because we did some cool stuff with like recording like birds outside playing during it, and like it sounds like a music box, and I kind of programmed that myself, which was super which I was really proud of, because I was just like, okay, just make it sound like this, and he literally just clicked it and dragged it into it. And he's like, oh, this is good. That's just adjusted a little bit. There's definitely parts though. There's on every song I can almost find a part, but on the last song there's this part where the lyrics are, feels like I'm waiting for something amazing. And that's like, I think that's the best my voice has ever sounded, or it's the closest to what I've always wanted it to sound like. So I think that's a big thing too, just because I've always had struggle with like vocal performance as far as that goes. And then I'd say in terms of like a struggle, was that kind of the second half of the question, just like challenges with it. So I would say like during the writing process, the challenge is that me and Andrew are like very hard-headed. And I am very much like, I want to do this my way, and he very much is like, that is stupid, you're wrong. like, and he won't say it quite like that, but like sometimes I'll write things that like don't make sense. Like you'll hear them and like the riff might be in a weird like phrasing or something, and so he has to think about it, and he hates it. And so I think that like writing wise, there were some challenges like with just kind of our egos, and figuring out when to back down and when to follow through. And I think also just like the general emotional challenge of like holding on to a group of songs so long and like having so much time to think about them. that makes you really question whether they're good or not.
Yeah.
Like some days I'll be like, this is like the best record ever. This is so sick. Like if people don't like this, they're wrong. And then like 2 days later, I'll listen. I'll be like, man, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if people are going to like this. I don't know, like, how I feel about it. So I think that was the other challenge, was just that emotional struggle of, you know, imposter syndrome of like, oh, I shouldn't even be a musician. Like my friend bands are blowing up and, you know, they deserve to blow up, but I shouldn't, like, cause whatever. But that's being an artist, I guess. Or
It's because you're not on TikTok. That's why you haven't blown up.
that's it.
That's the only reason.
I sometimes attribute it to that. It makes me feel a little bit better. I'm like, yeah, it's because I'm not a cute little indie TikTok singer. That's why.
LP2 is going to be wild. It's going to complete redesign of the aesthetic. Just be a Zoomer album.
Exactly. That's a good idea. Next album, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be purely for the Zoomers.
I expect some royalties for that.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
So you mentioned that there were 3 title tracks. The intro track, the opening, is the one that actually is titled "I Want to Live My Life." What are the other 2 title tracks? Are those like those kind of transitional moments, like the one in the middle with the ellipsis, and then the closing track, but better? Or which songs were you?
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So yeah, they all contain a variation of the same like lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one is like, there's something in my closet laughing at me. I've learned to love it without it. I don't think I could sleep, blah, blah, blah. So the other ones kind of move through that of like, sort of like accepting or challenging like those thoughts in that first one. Because the album originally, we were like trying to figure out what to title it. And we were like considering I Want to Live My Life, ... but better. But I was like, that's too many words. I just don't want to do that. So realistically, those 3 are, and it's definitely like, you know, a nice introduction to the album and then a transitional like acoustic thing, which is different from what we have ever done realistically. And then the last song is just kind of like the big, like
the culmination,
you know, final fruition of the, so yeah.
Okay. If like 90s bands can like have some of the names that they do, I feel like you guys could have named just a single album with an ellipsis in there. Like,
yeah,
maybe it's just like because my brain's poisoned by like reading Pitchfork scores when I was in high school. But there's like the album by this band, it's ... and You Will Know Us by The Trail of the Dead. They got like a perfect score in like 2000, and I was like, yo, what is this? That's just like, I mean, they're an awesome band. Kind of a dumb name. Like, why would you start your band name with an ellipsis? But if they can do that and get a perfect score on everybody's favorite music website, I think you guys can do whatever the hell you want.
maybe that's the key. Maybe I really fucked up by not having it in there. We'll find out.
We'll see. Days, so I want to talk a little bit about the 2 music videos you guys did for this, leading up to this album, for the 2 singles, With Weight and Through the Windshield. I'm also interested because you mentioned earlier that it didn't really seem like people connected with the songs you did on the 4-Way Split from 2017. Yet, as far as I could find, those are the only other prior Stars Hollow songs that had music videos.
I know, it's the crazy thing.
That's wild, yeah. was that something that you guys were making and shooting before the split was out, and you kind of had that feeling of, oh, this isn't really connecting with people like we wanted it to, or were you just like, no, we're going to go for it, let's do these videos, let's just put out a couple videos for these songs?
Yeah, so basically both of those videos kind of happened just out of convenience. So Good for Nothing, our friend Caitlin Dargan was on tour with us. We were touring with Unturned, and she was doing photography for both of our bands.
Yeah.
And so I had asked her, I was like, hey, can you like just take video every night so we can have just like a live tour, whatever, music video? And so she did. And I thought it turned out really cool, actually. I was really happy with it. And then the other one was, there's this guy from the Des Moines area. His name's Tyler Dreyer. And he really liked my old band Porch Swing. And he shot a music video for us for free back then because he just liked the music. And he's like, music videos are fun for me because I usually do like corporate stuff.
Yeah.
So this is just fun. So same thing happened with Participation Award. Is he was like, hey, I still really like this band too. I want to do it for free. But this time it was crazy because he brought like a big truck and like a crew of like 5 people, and it was like a whole thing. And it was just us taking advantage of doing something for free that would look really cool.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. So it definitely wasn't like something we were like planning all along.
Okay.
Just kind of happened, and but yeah, it's so fucking weird that the two songs that have music videos from back then are the least popular song. It's like so weird, but like it's just also a cultural thing because in Japan, people were like really expecting us to play participation award because like YouTube is more popular there in terms of like listening to music. And so people were like, there were people that were kind of like, they didn't tell us they were upset, but we kind of got the vibe that they wanted us to play participation award, and we didn't. And so like, just a very weird thing, because in our brains we were like, no one cares about that song, and then we go across the ocean and it's like the song that people want to hear.
You never would have guessed. Yeah,
it's just all a big joke.
Yeah, so back to the more recent music videos. Just talk a little bit about making those. I believe you worked with the same director for the both of them, and very different vibes. One has kind of fun rollers. Is the fun roller skate video? The other one in a car crash and just all beaten up and playing the song. Which kudos to whoever did the makeup for that. Looked really good. Yeah, just talk a little bit about making those. What were just some of the parts that like really stood out to you when you're making them, and I guess maybe even talk a little bit about like why those songs stood out to you, like to be singles and to be singles with videos as well.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as recording them, so Andrew, our drummer, he is like a wedding photographer and videographer on the side. So he has like all that gear, all that experience. And so, and he's said in the past, like, oh, we can just do it whenever. It's just like one of those things where it just seems like such a big thing to take on. Especially when like it's all our problem. There's no one to really like help mitigate all of those things. And so yeah, when we were figuring stuff out for the album, we were like, let's do it. Let's just make a video for all the singles. Like, let's just knock it out. And so yeah, Andrew was like, yeah, we can do it. We'll just have my friend Stu help. So Stu helped shoot everything because obviously when Andrew's on camera, someone has to have the camera. So Stu was doing a lot of that, and he was amazing considering he has zero experience doing that, really. And then our friend Sky, actually Gavin's partner Sky, they did the makeup for Through the Windshield.
Okay, hell yeah.
And they did amazing. It was great. I bought just like a bunch of crappy makeup and fake blood off of Amazon. And I just texted them and I was like, wait, can you come with Gavin? Like, I don't know how to do makeup. Like you do. So they were a huge help with that. But kind of similar just to the other two videos was just like the convenience of knowing that we could do it ourselves, that we could, have all the say in it and everything. But yeah, and we have one more music video that's coming out tomorrow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, for Out the Sunroof, which someone else is shooting, because after doing 2 videos, we were like, fuck this. Like, we don't want to do this anymore. Like the most awkward part is in the group chat trying to come up with ideas. Like, because we're all like musically inclined people, and if it's like sound related, we got it. But like none of us have that inclination towards like making something visually like appealing through a concept, I guess.
Yeah.
So we reached out to his name's Tyler Stish, I believe, or his name's Tyler something. His company is called Little Stish. But he shot the band Carpool's music video.
Oh, okay.
And I watched it and I was like, this is so good. Like, this is like insane production quality. Like it, yeah. And it had the effect on me where I liked Carpool before, but I didn't listen to them very much. And after seeing that video, I just listened to them like every day for like 2 weeks. And I was like, I want that. I want to have like a music video that's so good. People are going to be like, yeah, I want to watch it multiple times. I want to listen to this song over and over. Which I liked our other 2 videos. There's nothing wrong with them. It was just not quite as much of a narrative, I guess.
Yeah.
And so with Tyler, I told him, I was like, literally do whatever you want. Like, make it like a short film and do whatever you want. Like, we're not in the video at all. Because I was just like, just do whatever you want in terms of like a narrative. And then he sent me like a script, and then we had a Zoom call where he was just like, okay, this is the general idea. And I was like, fuck yeah, go for it. Like, this sounds great. Like 10 times better than any idea we would have. So yeah, so it's worked out super nice, and it's been really cool to just have that visual component to go along with everything. And people react super well to like hype videos, like on Twitter and Instagram, like that just like gets people going for whatever reason. So that's been helpful. But yeah, cool process. Just I don't care to take care of it ourselves for a while. So
yeah, I feel like a little bit of a dork because I didn't know Andrew's name prior to asking you earlier. And so I was like, yeah, I think you worked with the same director for these videos. It's just literally your drummer. A person of many talents.
Yes, he is. He's crazy.
Yeah. So if at the time that you'll be hearing this, the video will be out. So check it out if you haven't. Talk a little bit about working with Acrobat Unstable. How did you get connected with those folks? They've been on a years-long hot streak. It feels like absolutely incredible group of people. But how did you get connected to work with them in a label capacity? Because I think all of them, if not like for sure, Eric and Marty are in and have been in bands and probably have crossed paths in a just like touring musical sense. But how did you end up working with them for vinyl and promo and everything else that they've been helping out with?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, like you said, I met Marty and Eric through playing shows like on tour in Charlotte, North Carolina. And they at the time had kind of said like, hey, we have a label. Like if you need someone to put out your stuff, like blah, blah, blah. And this was before like I even started writing I Want to Live My Life. And I literally never met them. I'd never heard of Acrobat Unstable. So it was one of those things where I was like, someone's just, trying to talk me into doing something, whatever. They're probably like, I legitimately had the thought like, okay, cool. Yeah. Like, it was like kind of a shitty thing, but it's like, that just happens on tour a lot where someone's like, oh, my label Sleepy Bedbug fucking tapes. Like wants to
I have a solo project too. Check it out.
Yep, exactly. So, but eventually like we stayed in contact just through like, the music scene and being mutual friends with a lot of people. And then we were starting to kind of shop around the record, and we had some labels that were interested ahead of time before the record was even, demoed or anything. And we decided that we were going to fund the record ourselves so that we could kind of just have any option that we wanted, that we wouldn't owe anyone money really, so that we could actually see money faster, which doesn't really matter, but it was just like better than being in debt to someone for like $20,000 for like 10 years or whatever. So I talked to some labels that were interested, which like a few of them were like dream labels, like labels that I really like ever since I started playing emo music, I wanted to like work with them. Which I would name names, but I don't think it's cool to do that probably.
Yeah. But I'm very interested, but I respect that. I think that's the good call.
Yeah. So ultimately, they were all really cool. They all had, good offers for us. They all were interested. And then one day, Eric from Acrobat and then Alex Martin, they both were like, yo, let's get on a Zoom call. Let's talk. We want to put this record out. Like, let's talk about it. And so we got on the Zoom call, and I was just kind of like, still not sure what to do. And they just like cared so much. Like they wanted it so bad. And they were like, yo, we can do whatever. Like, this is like, here's the thing. We care about you more than blah, blah, blah. And that they just really pushed for it and showed me like that they gave a shit.
Yeah.
Which was the thing, like those dream labels that I liked. Like I have friends that are on those labels that literally have said like that it's kind of shitty. Like they don't feel like they get the attention or resources that they deserve. They feel like it's like a little challenging. And so to see how much they cared about Stars Hollow and about this record was just like super cool. And at that point I told them, I'm 99% sure I'll go with you guys. Just, I was just also considering some other things, but after talking to the other people I was still considering, I was like, nope, fuck it. We're going with Acrobat, especially after we did the Happy Again and Tadpole vinyl, like
the pressings. Yeah.
So they were so chill about it. And they pretty much would do whatever we wanted and just like threw out their own ideas. And we're just like, yeah, this would be sick. And it was just very collaborative. And it felt good to feel like I had a say in it. So so yeah, ultimately it was just like, we had options, and we set it up so that we would allow ourselves to have options. And Acrobat ultimately, for one, showed us they cared the most. And two, honestly, like I just think that they are really good people with really good taste in music and really good sensibility about who to sign to their label. Um, and so I was like, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
Like if someone were to look back in time at the Acrobat Unstable roster, like right now, like it's like the Callous Dow Boys, Carpool, Us, Awake But Still in Bed, Hazing Over, like bands that are just all really cool.
Yeah.
Granted, aren't like huge bands by any means, but it's just like all bands that are respectable and put out good music. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to be part of that, honestly.
Yeah. I guess it is kind of weird to think about like that none of these bands are that big, even though like they feel huge. If like for people that are in the scene, quote unquote, or like keep track of Acrobat and like the releases, like these feel like the biggest bands in the world sometimes, but everybody's still
For
just
sure.
mostly DIY. um,
Exactly.
yeah, sick. Um, so I always feel kind of bad asking about tours, uh, since we've been doing digital interviews and pandemic interviews. But what are some highlights just from like your touring experiences? I would say especially like the Midwest and Minneapolis, just because biased and want to show some love to uh, Minnesota, Iowa. But also, what were some highlights from going all the way to Japan? Because most, I feel like that's a really crazy opportunity that a lot of people don't get to take, and it's so sick that that happened at all, and it must have been a really wild experience and hopefully really positive. So, what were some parts that you still look back upon like extra fondly, and probably will stay with you? I'd say.
Yeah. So I would say, as far just to touch base on the Minneapolis thing, ever since I was like, oh god, it was probably like 2014, I started getting involved in the music scene up in Ames, where I was going to college.
Okay.
And the thing there was like we would have Minneapolis bands come through all the time, like Household, Molly's Worst Enemy, Pierre, like all those kinds of bands.
Yeah.
Um, and so just kind of being a small college town and all of our bands being like fairly new because we were all just meeting in college, we just respected those bands a lot. And it kind of became this thing of like Minneapolis bands, like we want to be as good as these Minneapolis bands. And so we would tour with quite a few Minneapolis bands back then too, like Affogato, which is like Infinite Me and Internet Dating
Okay.
members. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of just really cool bands from up that way. With Iowa in between, they're really good. Um, and then yeah, so I think like Minneapolis has been super important for us for partially for that reason. It was kind of like a proving ground for us. And once a lot of those bands started to fuck with Stars Hollow, like I was like, okay, like this is good. This means that we're like we don't totally suck, so that's a plus. Um, and then as far as like touring in general, like we honestly have been like super lucky and have gone on a lot of super good tours. None of our tours have ever been like a total miserable bust by any means. Like there's moments on every tour, for sure, um, but I really liked touring with Nice. Like that was just really fun because we were all just friends.
Those
And
are the homies.
like
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And honestly, like giving Roddy shit and Roddy giving me shit was like very comforting at all times. We toured with Origami Angel, and that was cool because just like obviously they're like one of the biggest bands within this genre at the moment. And it was really cool just to see them go from that level of like being like us, where we would go to a town, people would kind of know us, like you'd sell some merch, it was whatever. And now I see videos of them playing like those same areas, and it's like there's like 250 kids there, like just like
Yeah.
so I think I look at that fondly, just partially because of that, because that's a really cool experience to have that, just to have seen what it was like before and what it's like now. Um, and then when the band was first starting, I was a pretty like heavy drinker, and I used to beer bong Four Locos all the time on tour. And so that was like I look at that fondly, just because I would never do that ever again. Um, so yeah, we've had some good fun tours. Japan was like one of the coolest experiences of my life, but not gonna lie, it was one of the hardest.
Yeah.
It was way harder than any US tour we've ever done. Because in the US, you hop in a van, you drive for 6 hours, do nothing, and then you show up, it's all relaxed, whatever. In Japan, you're taking the train everywhere. You're carrying your merch and your guitars and everything on trains that are packed with people. Like if you get lost or you miss a stop, it's very stressful. And then also like at every show, they have gear backlined, so everyone plays through the house's amps and the drum kit and the So the only thing you have that's your own is your pedal board and your guitar.
Yeah.
So I think that all of that accumulated to quite a bit of like stress and just unfamiliarity, especially for us coming from, you know, the other side of the world, a totally different time zone, totally jet lagged. Like we played like shit the first couple of nights, honestly, just because we were so like, it was so hard to adjust.
Yeah.
And the other band on the tour was from the Philippines, and which was like a 3-hour flight. So like, so they were like ready to go, refreshed, and we were just like kind of dragging. But ultimately that tour was insanely cool. People were really nice. We played some really cool shows. We got to see some just incredible things. I've always wanted to go to Japan because I'm just like, I don't know, I really like anime and shit. So I was always like, okay, let's go see that shit. But also just seeing like all the Shinto shrines and like all the like cultural things was really, really cool. And it was the first time I've gone anywhere outside of like, you know, the American area in Canada. So yeah, it was super valuable, super great. I am insanely glad that we did it. But yeah, transparently, it was really, really tough. And maybe that's just like my American work ethic compared to like the Japanese work ethic. But it's very, very different.
No, that sounds like pretty valid. Like there's all the like the transportation and jet lag and everything that would add up. So since I believe Happy Again, you've worked with Alexis Politz for all the design for at least cover art. Maybe merch. I didn't check on that, but at the very least, just working with them very heavily. Love Alexis, and so I want to ask, how did you first get connected with them and start working with them, and also how important has it been to have a consistent visual aesthetic? Because I feel like that's somewhat unique for like across albums and EPs, where like often like the singles will look similar to the album cover, like be kind of connected. But this has been all the releases, like the EP, Tadpole, the singles for this record, and then obviously the final album cover, I Want to Live My Life. So how important would you say that like that aesthetic consistency has been, and how has it kind of benefited, I guess, you and the band?
Yeah, it's been really important. So actually, it's really hard to tell, but Alexis also did our first EP, the artwork for that. But it's one of those things where like both our band and them were like very much developing as artists, I feel like. And they gave us exactly what I asked for, and I was so happy with it. And so when it came time to do Happy Again, Alexis is amazing at like deciphering my bullshit. Like I will send them like a 5-paragraph thing of what's in my head that makes no sense, and they will find a way to turn it into a real thing. And so yeah, having for one that relationship of just like knowing that someone is going to give me exactly what I asked for and will, you know, figure it out has been super, super cool. And like you said, I feel like not many bands, you know, maintain an aesthetic throughout their entire like career almost. And I think for us, it was just, we've always valued having one, that relationship with an artist, and two, just having that consistency where when you see something, you say, oh, that must be a Stars Hollow thing. Because also with our merch, we always have Alexis design something.
Yeah.
For every single tour, there's always something, or we'll recycle an old thing that they've done. And that's part of it, is that like we want someone to come to the merch table and, you know, to look at the vinyl, and then they see this shirt that like kind of matches the aesthetic, and then there's a fanny pack that is embroidered that matches it, and it's like just kind of this thing where we want a cohesive look. And then that cohesive look also kind of like allows us to, you know, have like a one-off stupid anime shirt or something. It's like, and it makes it almost cooler because you're like, oh, that's like special, that's different. So definitely it's one of the cooler parts of this band has been like Alexis's artwork throughout. And I like used to joke around. I still do sometimes that like they're almost like a fourth member of the band at this point, just like with how consistent it's been. So
Yeah. Um. So this is a bit of an unrelated note, but um, I saw a tweet from the official band account, which I'm assuming was you, a couple days ago about Bandcamp Fridays,
oh
and
yeah,
on as we were on the verge of yet another Bandcamp Friday, and it's difficult to see nuanced takes on it beyond just huzzah, listen to my band, which is fine.
yeah.
But I want to ask you about that just as someone who has participated and also who's been in a band that's participated. Um, where kind of did your initial, I guess, like discontent with it stem from? And like, if you check out the original tweet, if you haven't, if you haven't seen it yet, but and do you think the negatives of something like that and the kind of narrative that's been generated around it outweigh the positives of, I guess, in a simply put way, just bands getting money, which is like fine and capitalist of us, but like it's what it
Yeah.
is. But I'm just really curious to hear a little bit more of your thoughts about that and kind of what led to you, like just I guess more putting it out there publicly instead of just kind of thinking it to yourself. Because I'm 99% sure other people feel and empathize with your thoughts that you put out there.
hmm Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've thought for quite a while. I just didn't want to say it because it's like so many people put Bandcamp on this pedestal of being like
Yeah.
a savior of DIY music and whatever, and it's like it's just not. And like I just and Hayden, the band For Your Health, Hayden has kind of like talked about this as well,
Yeah.
about like how people put this like huge shadow over Spotify and how they don't pay their artists enough, which they don't. That's 100% accurate. But if you're gonna put that shadow over Spotify, it has to be over Bandcamp too, because like they're realistically, it's just like one time a month that they get to be like, oh, look at us, we're so helpful, like yay. And then the other 29 days of the month, they're taking 75% of like music sales, and it's just like absurd. And that's exaggerating. It's not quite 75%, but it's still enough to be like.
And even if there's like if there's a label involved as well, like they
yeah.
presumably get a cut, and it just kind of cuts down on everything.
Exactly. And if you sell merch on Bandcamp, which we have, they can't take a cut of your merch sales, so they have to like offset it. So they'll kind of like take away from your digital sales in the future. So like we've sold, yeah, it makes no sense. So we've sold, after a tour, we'll sell like a bunch of merch, and then we'll rack up like a $40 debt to Bandcamp just for selling on there. And then like, so people will buy our music for like $1. And, I bet they probably, like, honestly, they're probably well-intentioned. And they're like, oh, I'm going to be nice and spend my money on this band so that they get the money. But we don't see that dollar. Like
Yeah,
that,
you get like 25 cents or like 40 cents or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, I think my biggest gripe with it is just how many people have revolved like releases and like plans and stuff around it. And just people being like, oh, Bandcamp Friday, like it's this amazing thing. Like, honestly, like Spotify has put our band right into people's hands, like in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
They put you on playlists, they, curate playlists, they do things that like the pay still sucks, but ultimately more people are listening.
It's had a more tangible impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, because we're in an age where like, I'm guilty of it too, where like I don't really necessarily want to have to look hard for the things that I want. Like I want it to just, be there sometimes. And that's not everyone's sentiment, and that's totally fine, but it's just like the majority of people. And so then when you also put it, like when I think about the times where we've gotten money from Bandcamp, like we withdraw our money from our distro stuff, like, twice a year or something. And it's just much more satisfying to look at that and be like, oh, we have like $1,000 or $2,000 sitting here, that was just sitting there from people just like listening to our music.
To the band, yeah. Yeah.
And that just felt better to me than seeing some kids spend $1 that we only saw 25 cents of,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I definitely think that like all music streaming services are just inherently like evil and are taking advantage of art that people create. But ultimately, like when it comes down to it, like I like Spotify better than Bandcamp. I think the Bandcamp has some cool features and stuff, but I just don't think that, it should be applauded as some savior of music when I can't even just stream music on my phone through it half the time. It's like
Yeah.
a process. So,
Yeah.
um,
Um, this kind of sucks because I'm gonna plug music journalism here, which is like the dorkiest shit you can do. But like I've seen some really interesting stuff that kind of touches on a lot of that, especially in regards to your one's ability to stream through Bandcamp, because like they like cut you off. I think after like 3 listens or something, or like 3 or 4
yep.
streams, but like they still give you 4 or like they give you a certain number of streams with where the artist sees nothing. And sometimes like stuff is only on Bandcamp and I want to listen to it before I buy it. And I think that's what their intent is, at least Bandcamp's intent. But I really agree with like that point about like that kind of throws even more of a monkey wrench into it. And there's been some really cool stuff written about their new vinyl pressing service or whatever. The newsletter and publication Water and Music has done some really interesting reporting on that, like talking to bands who it's often bands that are already kind of big enough to do it, where it isn't really actually helping out a lot of like the smaller artists yet. So like maybe it will, and cool. But if you found if you listener found Tyler's thoughts interesting, I also recommend checking out some of that stuff, because I think you raised some really good points there, and also just like your initial tweet raised really good points about just kind of everyone bootlicking Bandcamp once a month and and getting like 100 emails, and it's just kind of annoying sometimes.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Thank you for bearing with me and talking about not Stars Hollow or the album you're about to put out.
Absolutely.
So just kind of wrap up here a little bit. What does the future of Stars Hollow look like? What are you looking forward to? Besides hopefully like basking in the glory of putting out an album into the world for at least a little while and taking a breath. Because I've seen it's kind of been like memes where it's like next album's gonna sound like this, but like sounds like you're at least like kind of like already have like your eye on like the next batch of songs and continuing to work on stuff. So talk a little bit about that. What are you looking forward to continuing to do with Stars Hollow going forward after I Want to Live My Life hits everyone's ears and people can buy it and listen to it and stuff?
So it's kind of hard to say. I would like to do so. For one, like you said, I do want to like just kind of bask in it for a little bit, and just like the way that it's done, it's out, like people can hear it, people can like it, they can hate it, like it's just going to give me a sense of relief, realistically, just because this is the first like full-length record that I've put out in my life. Like all my past bands, it's been EPs, splits, singles, you know. So this is just like a big thing for me personally also. I have 2 songs written, 2 new songs, which is the first time I've written since the album. I'm really excited about both of them because they're just like very interesting. Like I don't know quite how to explain it. One of them sounds like it could be like a fucking Story So Far song, but better. And the other one sounds like a hardcore band. I don't know. It's just like, I think the next thing we're going to do isn't going to be another album. We'll probably do like, a split or 2, like a 7-inch or something. It'll just be something small. Cause like I'm starting grad school soon. We all, like I said, we all have jobs. So I don't think that we're ever going to hit it quite as hard as we did back when like Happy Again was a thing. Cause then we were touring like all the time, doing it as much as we could, whatever. So I think we're definitely going to still be active and do stuff and, all of that, but we're just going to make sure to kind of take care of our personal lives, while doing that. So, and yeah, I'm hoping that we can at least get like 1 or 2 tours, like before the end of 2022. Like I'm just like really hoping that we can get something in.
That would be cool. That'd be good.
Yeah, be very good. Cause that's the thing. We've never played the songs on the album live except for With Weight. With Weight, we used to play, and Out the Sunroof, we played in Japan, but yeah, otherwise all the songs like we've never played in real life. And so I think that would just be a very cathartic thing that I would like to have happen, but I'm not holding my hopes too high. So
take it as it comes. Well, things are constantly changing and updating and no one knows what the hell they're doing. And even with like somewhat marquee artists like announcing tours for like the fall, house shows probably it'll be a little bit longer because people do love
Yep.
slapping each other to emo music and bonking into each other and stuff, and
Yep,
that might be a little
exactly.
rough, even with
Yep,
vaccines.
a very dirty, very dirty locations, just all around. Like, it's not regulated whatsoever. either.
Love them, but
Yeah.
also gross.
Yep, exactly.
Cool. That wraps up all my official questions. But I love ending interviews by asking about what bands have you been listening to lately? Who do you like? What smaller groups or underground bands do you want to shout out that you've really just been enjoying lately, or have put out an EP or a release lately that you've really enjoyed, and just kind of putting a spotlight on some other bands and just spreading the love a little bit. Especially like if there's any like bands that are in the Iowa scene and have been active that are from there that are unheralded. Want to definitely give them some love, give the hometown band some love. If you need to take a second to pull out your phone or something, now's the time to do it.
I think I might have some off the top of my head. So I think as far as Iowa goes, there's this new band called Bouquet out of pretty much the Cedar Rapids and Des Moines areas. And they've all been in bands in the Iowa scenes forever. Their vocalist was in a band called Avoid, which was very like La Dispute post-hardcore. And then he played bass in Ghost Key. So they've been around doing stuff. But they're in a band and they just put out a music video. And the song's really good. It's honestly really, really good. So I'd recommend checking them out for sure, because they're like brand new. Like not many people probably have even heard of them. And then there's this band from Wisconsin called Barely Civil that I think is the most underrated band in the universe. Their songs are so good. The full-length album they just put out, oh my God, was that last year now?
It was. I think so, yeah. Or it was really early. No, it was like fall 2020 or something.
Yeah, okay, that's
something
crazy.
Like that.
But
yeah.
But that album is incredible, and they're incredible people. And I absolutely love them. And then there's a million I could say, but I would say the most important one for me is Carpool. Carpool is also wildly underrated. Their album Erotic Nightmare Summer is like one of the coolest collection of songs I've heard in a while. It's so well produced. The songwriting's really good. Yeah, I just back that band really hard, and I listen to them I listen to the album like once a day, and that I can't say that much for anything.
Yeah.
Like I only listen to like Phoebe Bridgers, Nicole Dollanganger, and like Kublai Khan. Like that's all I listen to, like for the most part. And yeah, so as far as like DIY and emo stuff goes, like for it to catch my attention, it's usually like it catches it hard, because otherwise I don't explore too much. So Bouquet and Barely Civil and Carpool, I'd say, are three that definitely deserve attention.
Yeah, I have not heard of Bouquet, so I'm definitely I'm putting them into a Google search right now, so I don't forget to do this as soon as we're done.
Yeah, for sure. They put a music video on the channel like Dreambound. It's I think it's some guy in South America, so it's like a ton of Brazilian kids watch it. So
hell yeah.
It's a whole thing. So
they're really enabling the come to Brazil crowd of commenters.
That's literally that's accurate. But yeah, very, very cool band.
Cool. That wraps things up here. Stars Hollow debut album out May 7th. Listen to it now if you haven't already. Like, why are you listening to this interview if you haven't checked out the record? Like, do you hate yourself? Like, what the hell? If you've made it this far too and you haven't, like,
yeah,
I guess just finish it and like almost respect, like in a weird way.
Yeah,
but I think there's still some vinyl available. We'll see if it lasts, if that's the case when this comes out. But definitely check out the record, support the band, check them out. Congrats on the release. Super excited for it to be out in the world, and thanks for taking like 80 minutes to chat about it.
Yeah, of course. No, thank you. I love doing stuff like this, so thank you for doing this and listening to me ramble for an hour and 20 minutes.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.